Peter, and thanks for the introduction. I have to say that as the sort of Welsh person on the panel, people are always surprised. I don't have any music credentials. I'm not a member of a choir. So, yes, just to start by saying that it's really welcome that the Institute for Government is putting the spotlight on this domestic aspect of the EU negotiations, and I think Akash has outlined very well the range of issues that come into this. But in a way, this is also a continuity of the sort of issues that you've been working on since the Scottish referendum, and very much the emphasis on don't take the union for granted, the importance of the civil service and the joint shared civil service values and intergovernmental relations as part of the glue, or indeed the cement that we need to keep the union together, because our First Minister, Carwyn Jones, his immediate response to the Scottish referendum was that it had underlined so strongly that the United Kingdom is a voluntary union of nations, and all this discussion about machinery and so on, as Ken has said, is just about the process for making that a reality. So coming from Wales, I have to start with the finance here, and there's a huge amount at stake for Wales in these negotiations. I mean, Wales currently receives around 600 million a year of investment from European programmes. That's the combination of agricultural support programmes, the really important economic and social projects in Wales funded through the structural funds, and also considerable investment that goes into our universities and other projects. So this is really substantial for us, and during the campaign commitments were made that every penny of this would keep coming to Wales, and the First Minister has said that it's absolutely vital that continues, and that issue will be the subject of huge scrutiny in Wales as this process develops. So just to focus really on two dimensions of this, as I said, the funding aspect and the constitutional aspect. The point about the European funding is not only its intrinsic value to Wales, but also it's part of a wider context where it's been very well established objectively that Wales is relatively underfunded in relation to its needs. Barnett has shortchanged Wales, even if you assume we're getting all this European funding. If that were not to be protected, the situation is much worse, and that's the really vital context for these negotiations from our perspective. On the constitutional side, there are a number of positives for Wales. It was very welcome that the Prime Minister made such a point of emphasising the intergovernmental aspects of the negotiations, immediately in Downing Street after the referendum, and then reinforced again in the Cabinet statement. So that's really positive, and that was followed up immediately at official level by some really very serious discussions that are continuing about how that is going to work in terms of the machinery. So that's really positive. I think on a sort of note of caution for those of us who've been at the coalface of trying to make the intergovernmental relations process work, we don't underestimate how difficult that has been in the past. Simply because, and this isn't for want of trying. There's been a huge effort, but intensified, I think, since the Scottish referendum by the Cabinet Office to really ramp up the engagement of Whitehall with devolution, and to strengthen both the sort of cultural learning and development side of it and the process side of it. So that is very positive, but we're still left with a process which is run by the Cabinet Office, which is used to running Cabinet Committee meetings where UK government is in charge and it's driving forward its own business. So running intergovernmental relations like that, doesn't, that's not how it needs to work. And it is getting better, but it is still a big challenge for us. And I think what the EU withdrawal process is going to do is to really ramp that up. It's going to need to intensify that process, and that is going to be a big shared challenge for the civil service. On the positive side of that, I think, and I'm always somebody who instinctively looks on the bright side of everything, I remember in a previous role, I was working on public service reform at local level, and the challenge of how do you get public service delivery agencies, local authorities, the NHS, the police, etc., to really collaborate in the more in the way that Akash was describing, not just kind of consult people at the last minute, tell them what you were going to do and maybe tweak it, but genuinely work together. And there's a lot of research on this, but one of the key things that we learned from that is one of the things that really improves relationships and strengthens collaboration is when people work together on a joint project. So I think, drawing that analogy into this situation, this is going to be an intensification of intergovernmental working. There is a real indication that the UK government is serious about making that work. So, if that happens, I think it could actually really strengthen intergovernmental relations, because we are, in a sense, working together in spite of the political differences in some respects, working together to get the best deal for the United Kingdom out of this process, and of course from our perspective to get the best deal for Wales in that. So I think there are reasons to be optimistic as well as realistic about how difficult this process is going to be. And finally, Ken mentioned the federal debate, which again isn't new. I mean, it came to the fore after the Scottish referendum, and this is something that Carwyn Jones has made many speeches about, including a very well received one in this room, Peter, I think. And he has been consistently arguing that since devolution, the issue of different mandates in each part of the UK, different direct accountabilities, and of course the formal entrenchment of the devolved legislatures in the UK's constitution, which has come about as a result of the Scotland Bill and the Wales Bill currently before Parliament. This has really jacked up and brought the federal issue to the fore. And I think the point we would like to make from Wales, I think, here is that the argument about a more federal structure for the UK has always been bedeviled by the imbalance and the question of England and how will that be resolved. And of course that's not a matter for us. I mean, that's a huge question for England to debate, but of course it affects the rest of the UK. But I think what we would like to see is more thinking about how we can make progress on that without having a fully federal structure, which is so challenging, but by bringing into this more federal thinking. And the speech that Carwyn Jones made last year, I think, is still very relevant. He quoted Andreas Goss, the Swiss philosopher, who talked about federalism as a process of enabling union while guaranteeing diversity, and in a sense that is the big challenge as we develop intergovernmental relations, not just in this negotiation but for the long term.